Lovely to see you all. Welcome. My name is Lee Minott. I am the operations manager for an organization called Dignity SA. And I love that at these dialogues, we just keep meeting more people and faces. Can I ask you, as far as possible, to mute your mics, please, just so that we don't have echoes? Really appreciate that. Thank you so much. Great. So let's dive into this. Tonight's topic is aging well together. And so it's lovely to see some of the cameras on and have a sense of who's in the room and the community, but no pressure. I've got a wonderful lineup of speakers, just gorgeous humans who I'm excited to introduce you to if you don't know them. And we're really going to dive straight into it. We're going to introduce you to some theory. We're going to discuss how that applies practically. And then we're going to introduce you to people who are really living this. And hopefully you will leave thinking differently and being inspired. That's the aim, that we all think about ourselves and each other differently after a conversation like tonight's. So Willem, you're first up, and I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself in preparation. Willem Myburgh is the head of training and development for an organization called GERATEC that specializes and has for many years now in providing a range of services in the elder care industry. And because tonight's a lot about the human side of aging, as particularly, but just being humans together, Willem, I'm going to ask you to start by telling us, how did you come to care about working in the aged sector and working with people towards the end of their lives? Tell us a bit of a story to give us a sense of you.
Thank you, Lee. Good evening, everyone, and I appreciate you making time for joining us in this conversation. Sure. I think if I have to go all the way back, it started with my grandmother. I've always had a close relationship with my grandparents. And I remember when she moved into a retirement home, it was a very strange concept because she was the first of my grandparents that moved into a retirement home. And it was this long passage, with everyone in a little room. And it was a very strange interaction and seeing old people all living together. A few years later, when I was a young adult, I started working in care, but I predominantly work with young adults living with learning disabilities. And then during COVID, I became a live-in carer for a family friend whose husband was living with dementia. And it just fascinated me. I think and I think it's because the same with autism, it just fascinated me to see how do you build a relationship with someone who no longer engages in the way that the majority of us engages. How do you build trust? How do you laugh together? How do you do the everyday things together? And I just found it really, really stimulating and really interesting. And then I was fortunate enough to have Professor Rain Strubel as a friend. And he offered me the Eden Alternative Kool-Aid, and I drank it with an abundance. And it was just a realization that the way that I viewed the world, I was not alone in it. That the way that we see older people and older persons in our communities in this institutionalized model is not the way forward. It's an unhealthy model. It's a model that isolates people. It's a model that stigmatizes older persons, and the Eden Alternative is a alternative way of saying no. The only way for us to age well together if it's in a community. So yeah, it's been a interesting journey to get where I am, but I'm loving my work. Yes.
What a fabulous introduction, and it takes us straight into the Eden Alternative. So I remember learning about this years ago, and it's really stayed with me, and it's something I've wanted to learn more about. So some people will know about it, some people won't, but I think it's endlessly fascinating, as you say. Once you drink the Kool-Aid, you just want to keep drinking. So particularly yes, for those of mine who've never heard of the Eden Alternative, can you introduce us to it, please? Let's dive straight in.
Yep. So it was developed in the United States by Dr. Bill Thomas. He's a geriatrician, and his first job as a geriatrician was in a retirement home. And he quickly realized that a lot of the older persons died from loneliness. And he wanted to write that onto their death certificates, and he wasn't allowed to. And he realized that this model that we've built, this institutional model, to treat older persons as patients and to treat aging as a disease, resulted in a lot of unhappiness, a lot of illness, a lot of isolation. So the three pillars of the Eden alternative is boredom, helplessness, and loneliness. And he says in these institutional models, it's those three pillars of institutional living that results in the death of older persons. So he started this different way of thinking, of saying we have to go back to, to being human. What do we need as an older person? And it doesn't change, from whether you're 25 or whether you're 85. We need human connection. We need to live in a home. We need to have our wishes and our desires and our humanness acknowledged. So Rain stumbled across the Eden Alternative in 2010 in the UK, and then believed that that's what we needed in South Africa. And it's been a fascinating journey to see how we've adapted that ideology and philosophy to the South African context. And it's still, when you speak to people, I think we all know it. We all know that's how we are supposed to look after older persons, and not only older persons, but anyone who is differently abled or is vulnerable, that we need human connection. Old age is not a disease. Just quickly about dementia. Dementia is a clinical diagnosis, but worldwide now we realize that you can't treat it clinically. The moment you treat dementia with a clinical outlook, that's when people become stigmatized. That's when they isolate. That's when we over-medicate. So it's really a way of saying we have to honor the dignity and the humanness of people, no matter what their abilities are or their ages.
Beautiful, Willem. Thank you. And you refer to your colleague, Professor Rain Struble, who actually joined us about 2 months ago for a conversation specifically focused on dementia and caregiving. And he also, again, in his classic way, just helped us think about these things differently. I mean, I definitely sat up. So if anyone wants to watch that, I'll provide links after this. But he spoke about dementia as possibly being a disease of the soul, a dis-ease of the soul. It really, really stayed with me. So, for anyone who wants to dive into that a little bit more, I definitely recommend that. So you're given a wonderful professional sort of high-level overview. I know that there are also sort of 10 tenets under that. Do you want to go into those or lift out one or two of those?
I think for me, one of the most important tenets is that it is about the relationships. We are relational beings. So how we relate to each other, how we relate to the place that we live in, all of those have a profound impact on our well-being. So there's in the domains, it's called the domains of well-being, and there's 7 domains. And those 7 domains are really the foundations of when we work with someone to say, how do we look at your well-being? So whether it's someone who's living in bed, whether it's someone who is in the most profound stage of their dementia, we can still do something to look at their well-being. We can still do something that acknowledges what brings them joy. We can still acknowledge what gives them meaning in their life. A quick story. We recently had a passing in one of the homes, and the carer, when we had our listening circle afterwards to reflect on the passing of the resident, said she walked past the resident the one day and she was drinking a Coca-Cola. And he said to her he couldn't remember the last time he had a Coca-Cola. So then we challenged the carers to go into the frail care and the dementia unit and ask all the residents when last that they had their favorite drink. And it was 6 years. So we went and we got everyone's drinks, and the one lady asked for a banana Sterry Stumpy. And the few minutes that she sat and sipped that Sterry Stumpy, through a straw, she became alive. She looked like a child again because she couldn't remember the last time she had a Sterry Stumpy. And the connection to that drink, as simple as it was, reminded her of childhood, reminded her of just, enjoying something simple, sitting and and drinking a Steri Stumpy. So it's not about big ideas. It's really about saying, I see you, you're a human being. There's small things that makes your life meaningful. How can I bring those things into your life, despite all the other challenges that we face? And sometimes it's as simple as a Steri Stumpy.
That takes care and effort and what Femada calls Eden eyes, I think. So we're going to turn to Femada, because Femada, I think, first of all, before we talk about how you've applied the Eden alternative, just maybe unmute yourself, and in preparation, we're going to chat to us. Lovely professional screen there. Femada, we're going to step through your journey slowly, but maybe just, I think you trained as a social worker and you came to TAFTA early on, but tell us how, at such a young age, did you come to care about working with people who were coming towards the end of their lives? How did this come to mean so much to you? And welcome. It's such an honor to have you here. And I'll introduce you properly and formally just now.
Okay. No, but thank you so much for inviting me into this space. Unfortunately, I don't have a romanticized story. You know, it wasn't, I can't really say it was my calling or whatever it was, but I landed up in this space purely by accident. When I trained as a social worker, my first job was working with children and families, and I was dealing with a really difficult matter. It was an abuse of a young child, and it was too much. So I needed to get out of that space. And by pure accident, I ended up going for an interview at TAFTA. And I remember the person who interviewed me, her name's Mary Leppens. She was my mentor for many, many years. And I sat in the office with her, sipping on a cup of coffee. And I was very frank. I said, you know, Mary, I really don't want to work with older people, but I will work here for 6 months. And in the 6 months, I'll give it my 100%, you know. And I had this idea that I was going to go on to like wonderful things. I wanted to work in industry, you know, I had those kinds of dreams. And so Mary took a chance and she said, well, okay, for 6 months, let's see how that works out. Well, it's turned out to be a very long 6 months, because like 27 years later, I am still here. But I can tell you this much. Since joining TAFTA, there has never been a day when I have been bored. Sometimes in a good way, sometimes not so much. But be that as it may, every day is a learning, every day is a new experience. But I think what's kept me grounded is that working with older people means that I have access to decades of lived experience. And it's fascinating when you actually take the time to sit and listen to how people have lived their lives, how they've dealt with challenges, how they've celebrated, how they've enjoyed the banana steri stumpy. You know, it's amazing. And it just gives you a glimpse into resilience, gives you a glimpse into what joy really looks like, simple pleasures. So yeah, maybe it was my calling, maybe it was the universe that was conspiring and put me in Mary's office at that time. But it's been joyful for me.
I mean, that's a fabulous story. It really, really is. And it speaks to what is so compelling about this work, that it's hooked you, kept you for so long. And you are now the CEO of a very large NGO, and you've been the CEO for a long time, Femada. So tell us a little bit about TAFTA for those who don't know.
Okay. Thank you. So TAFTA is the Association for the Aged. It's a nonprofit organization that was started up by a group of male volunteers in 1958. And I always find it fascinating. You know, we think of care and we always assume it's a woman's intuitive thing to do, but it was a group of men that had taken on the care of older persons as their project for the year. And they quickly realized that the problems that existed was far beyond what they could do as a project for a year. So they found other people that were interested. I think it was the wives that were more interested anyways. And so they started up the Association for the Aged. So it has roots in volunteerism. but in this belief that a better world for older persons was possible. And over the decades, TAFTA has reached out to hundreds and thousands of older persons through a basket of services that's transitioned and changed based on the needs of older people. So currently we support about 5,500 older people. We've got about 1,600 people under roof in our 13 different buildings, and we have all different types of accommodation, fit, frail, assisted living. It accommodates all different income groups as well. And then we support people in the community as well. Not everyone can go into a housing establishment, so we want to support people to live their best lives where they are. And so we have a group of very tenacious frontline workers that go out and make a difference to the lives of older people in the community as well. So, one of the things that people really respond to from a service offering point of view, obviously, is the accommodation. I think if you have a safe place to live in, then everything else sort of falls in place. But also, our community programs are well supported. So this idea that people like to connect and learn together and grow together is something that we see happening more and more. But what's really interesting is that, very often people think of older persons and see them as consumers of service. But what we found is that in discussions with our older people, engaging with our older people, they want to give back as much as they receive. They want to be able to make a difference in the lives of others as well. And it's amazing whether you are 60, 80, 91, 93, it doesn't matter. If you are able to help somebody else, it helps to express your humanity. And I was just looking at one of the posts on our Facebook page where one of the social workers had facilitated a give back to a creche or a early childhood development center, and it was something that the elders had done and they were handing over to the center. So I think being able to make a difference is important for older people.
But I'm actually just going to interject with a story here that you told me that I just loved, and I will keep telling. And it had to do with Mandela Day this month. We're still in the month of Mandela Day. And I mean, correct me, but my recap of the story is that people wanted to come to TAFTA and do their 67 minutes at TAFTA. And some of the residents pushed back and they said, well, they mustn't come too early because we want to go do our service first.
Absolutely.
The sense that you come to TAFTA to do things for older people, but those older people have agency and vikkel and are also doing things in their community and want to do their give back first. Thank you very much. Did I remember that story correctly?
Absolutely. And I'm so glad that Ivan is on this call as well, and you'll get to hear from him. He's one of these inspiring young people as well that gives back to the community throughout all of the buildings. And I see some of my colleagues are on here as well. Kirstine, who's one of the residential care supervisors at a block of flats. She also is quite involved in getting her people engaged in other activities. So I think for all of the staff, there's quite a lot of engagement in terms of looking for platforms where older people can do a little bit more in the community. So whether it is going to the hospitals, whether it is visiting the primary school next to their building, whatever they can do to serve others, our staff encourage that and support that and help them through that, but they help each other as well. So I think, here's the thing that we must move away from. There's this belief that older people are going to be passive recipients of our benevolence. That doesn't work because they are the givers of benevolence as well. So we need to create a space for that to happen.
Oh, that's glorious. I'm really keen to come to Ivan, but just before we do, won't you tell me a little bit about TAFTA's journey with the Eden Alternative? Because I think you learned about it about 10 years ago, and you said it's really been a journey. Tell us a little bit about that.
Absolutely. Do I have permission to share my screen?
To make you a co-host, so give me a
Okay,
moment.
so while you're doing that, perhaps I'll just quickly jump into this. TAFTA had taken a decision to adopt the Eden alternative many years ago. And in 2016, I did my Eden Associate training. So I'm proudly an Eden Associate as well. And there were so many points of resonance in terms of the Eden alternative. Firstly, because it was so simple, and it really talked to the issues that we saw. That was the first thing. The second thing was the Eden alternative gave the staff an excuse for good behavior. And what I mean by that is very often, when you're in a work environment, you must always complain about your work and, the drudgery and how terrible it is. And you have to wake up early and go to work, da, 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 da. And so there's kind of peer pressure for you to behave that way, always complain about things. But I remember after we went through our first lot of training and I went into one of the buildings and I was commenting to the nursing sister. I said, "Oh, this place looks really nice." And she looks at me and she's like, "Oh, but that's the Eden alternative." And it was just about making the space a space that was owned by the elders. So everything they did then became an excuse. It became the Eden alternative. If we were making a decision and we were not considering how this impacts on the older persons, very often I'd get, "But this is not the Eden way." I'm like, okay, right. The Eden way is very humbling. But this is what I wanted to share with you. It was so funny. So when we did the training, my daughter was 4 years old. And after we did the Eden Associate training, we had an assignment. We had to now go and train others. And so I was sitting at our table and I was trying to do my training. And my daughter, who was 4 at the time, she came up to me and she said, "Mom, what are you doing?" And I said, "I'm doing some work." But she never believed that I was. Oh, are you seeing my screen? Oh, not that part. Let's see if it comes up quickly.
We'll need to navigate to. Oh, I see you pulling up your assignment.
Yes, it was fascinating. That's the one I want to see. I've got too many screens open. That's terrible.
And I think I've lost your screen again. You might need to try sharing one more time.
Okay, there we go. That's the one. Okay. Are you now seeing this?
It says that you have started screen sharing. Yes, got it.
Okay. So this little drawing at the bottom is what I was drawing to show the 10 principles of the Eden alternative. So this first one here in the corner talks about majority of the suffering is accounted for in terms of loneliness, boredom, and helplessness, which Willem was talking about. And then, what is the antidote to loneliness? What's the antidote to helplessness and all the rest of it? And one of the principles is around wise leadership is the lifeblood. So I was drawing the owl and wise leadership. And so all of this tells the whole story of the Eden alternative. But at that point in time, my daughter said to me, "But Mom, you're not doing any work, you're drawing. How can drawing be work?" And I'm like, "No, but you have to make your work interesting." And why I'm sharing this is because the Eden alternative also gives you the opportunity to be creative around how you want to see the world, but how you want to translate that for others as well. So it's been really interesting from the TAFTA perspective. I think in our first batch, for the first 2 years, we trained over 60 Eden Associates. And then we took our organization through the path to mastery, because part of the Eden alternative is not just about the way you change the way you think about older persons or think about aging, but it's also about organizational transformation. It's about physical transformation. So we then took our organization through that path to mastery to look at how we embed these changes. And we were really, really pleased to be the first home in KZN to be accredited as an Eden home. So 3 of our care facilities are accredited. But over the years, the Eden Alternative has been embedded into our practice model. So to the point where, for example, our social workers, when they're doing the assessment now, Willem, you'll be very pleased to know, when we do the assessment, they look at the domains of well-being and they ask the question, how do we activate the different domains around, simple things like joy? What brings people joy? What allows us to feel safe? What does autonomy look like? What does identity look like? Oh, is that me? No, I don't think that's me. We are seeing.
I don't think so. Shanae, you're loading your whiteboard. I'm going to try and see if
Yes.
we can close that down. But Shanae Bierkus, if you could close down your whiteboard for us. Thank you.
Okay.
Keep talking.
So that's been our Eden journey. We went through the associate training, we went through the path to mastery, we looked at the domains of well-being, and all of that is used in the manner in which we engage with older people. So all of our programs are very intentional. When we look at introducing something new, we're asking the question around what domain does this activate? Are we looking at safety? Are we looking at autonomy? Are we looking at identity? Simple things like names, what names mean. And so it's embedded in so many of our programs. I could speak till the cows come home, so I'm going to pause there and happy to take any questions or if there's anything else you'd like to ask me.
I think I'm sure people are brimming with questions, and I'm going to ask them to hold on to them for now or type them in the chat box so we can see what's coming up for you. We won't go to questions just yet because there's the third and final person that I really want to introduce tonight. And that is Ivan Ronald. So if you can unmute yourself, Ivan. I know that your wife Stacey wanted to be with us tonight and can't, so we're missing her, but we're really delighted that you can be with us. And it was important to bring you in because we don't want to just talk about the people who live in TAFTA. We want to talk with the people who live in TAFTA. Even though, as Willem said, you looked far too young for someone to be living in TAFTA. You had this image. So thank you for image busting for us from the very beginning. And you and I have only just met, Ivan, and Femada tells me you have a fabulous story of how you came to TAFTA. So in the spirit of introducing ourselves with stories, please tell us that one.
Thank you. Thank you so much to our host. And just nice to engage with Femada and Willem. It's really interesting to be here tonight. Well, as you can see, TAFTA is doing me well because I'm looking good, looking strong, looking motivated. And and there's so much more to do. But just a bit of my story is that I came into TAFTA, we applied in 2020 and we moved in 2024. So the backstory is that my parents lived at TAFTA Lodge, just not far from the beach. And they lived there about, I think it was roughly 16 years. And my in-laws lived here at King's Hall, where I am based. They lived here for about 5 years. And so when I put that all together, I'm looking like with my stay here, about 22 years of TAFTA experience and influence. And so that has shaped my thinking and my mindset. So I've come in with a different perspective, a different understanding of what active aging is all about and how to age well. So I had enough in me to help me see what it could be living here. And so we came in here in 2024. So I have to say, initially, it was my wife's big idea. We got to move to TAFTA. I said, well, why TAFTA? It's like, because when you think about an institution that cares for the elders, your immediate response is like, I don't want to go there to die. I don't want to go there. I don't want to go there and have all my dreams and hopes all crushed. I still got a lot to do and a lot to offer. She says, no, don't worry. Let's just apply and just move in there. But I'm glad we did, because when we moved in here, I just had a total different perspective of how life is lived here. I've seen myself not being plagued by the boredom and loneliness and helplessness, I have seen myself gaining more relationships and what it means to engage in community, and also how important community is with people my age and even older. And I realized there's so much value, there's so much that could be done, and there's so much in the conversations that could stimulate you and also change your view and your perspective as you get older. And of course, that plague about boredom, I am never bored. I am not bored. I am constantly, in fact, my mind is so active. Together with my wife Stacy, we are so actively thinking, we're always thinking, how can we add value to our elders here at TAFTA? What can we do? As opposed, like, what can TAFTA offer me? How can they care for me? How can they provide for me? No, for me, for us, it's the other way around. What can I do to bring value to what is already in place here? And how we can improve and become better. So yeah, so that's my journey. And even hearing the stories of my parents, because both my mom and dad were very actively involved at TAFTA Lodge. They were volunteers. I remember some weekends when my mom used to come stay over with us for the weekend. And then she used to tell me on Sunday afternoon, I got to be back before 8 on Monday morning. I said, Mom, you 80 something. What do you want to get back for? It's just relax. There's no hurry. She says, no. I got work to do. I'm involved in the office. I am serving there and I have to do that work. I couldn't keep her behind, so I had to take her. And my dad, every time I speak to him on the phone, I say, Dad, how are you doing? He says, no, I just came back. I just came now to have a cup of tea and a sandwich, and I go back to do work. I said, what work you doing? I mean, my dad is like now 89 or something. I was like, what work you doing? He says, no, I'm just helping people to fix this, and I'm doing that, and I'm going to see this person. It's like, what? So I think that legacy has influenced me and passed on to us. So my parents were very active. My in-laws were active. And so I think that's what motivated us. And I think that legacy has been passed on to us. And what I've seen in my parents, how happy they were, how blessed they were, the fact they were in a hurry to get back to their own space at TAFTA, that in itself says a lot. Because they love the community and they love engaging with people. Yeah, and that's basically my story. I mean, there's so much more to say, but I am loving it. I'm enjoying it. Of course, there's a lot of challenges. There's always things to work through and do stuff. But I think if we have the right mindset, and I think one of the two attractions here, especially at TAFTA, is the whole idea of innovation. And there is scope for that. There's room for that, to explore that. So it's not like it's dying. No. We are innovating. And that's so important. And the other thing is inspiration, inspiring active aging. For me, those two things captivate me. And I love that. So yeah, so I'm here and I can just share so many stories, but I'm really involved and I'm open to any questions, and that's it from my side. If there's anything more you want me to say, I can add to it.
I'm going to circle back with some questions for all of you and then open the floor just now. But that was a fabulous introduction and quite captivating. Thank you, Ivan. And it reminds me, Femada, of another story that you told me, and in your beautiful, very humble and very personal way. So I want to go back to that story because it links to Ivan's story, but it also has it's a very instructive story about how we as children sometimes engage with our parents as they age, and how we think about how we navigate that role, which can get quite complex. So, Femada, you told me a story about how, and I'm putting words in your mouth, so correct me, right? But how horrified you were when your father told you that he wanted to go to TAFTA.
Absolutely.
Can you tell that story?
Absolutely. I was sharing this with Ivan and a group of people at King's Hall as well. So, you know, my father's always been a very interested in the work that I do. And when he was still working, he was up in Johannesburg, and every time we had an activity in at TAFTA, he would come down, you know, whether it was taking the bus down to come for a fun walk or whatever it was. So he knew about my work, but he also knew about the engagement of older people, and some of his friends at TAFTA. So I was in a meeting, and the person who was managing our admissions into the building approached me, and she seemed a little bit embarrassed, and she's like, "Oh, Fem, you know, I have some documents." And I thought, "Oh gosh, okay." Generally, things come to me when there's a problem, so let me understand what is the problem I need to deal with now. And she's like, "No, we had this application, and it's from your dad." And I'm like, "No ways, my father. What is he up to? Like, really, why is he doing this to me, you know?" Uh, Obviously, you know, as kids, we always assume that our parents are out to get us, but no, not really. So my father is very traditional. You know, he believes that when when the daughters get married, then the fathers can't live with the daughters, because I said to him when I bought my house, there's a place in my house for you. That's your section. When you're ready, you come. But you know, he'll go and live with my brother, but he won't live with me. It's a crazy, crazy patriarchal society that we live in. But be that as it may. So I always knew there's a space for him, but my father put in an application at TAFTA without telling me. And so my staff didn't quite know how we're supposed to deal with this, but I knew now, okay, I need to recuse myself. And I said, that's okay. Okay, if he's applied, let's just deal with this. And so I took one step back, but I couldn't wait to get back to my office. And then I phoned my elder sister. I'm like, can you believe what my father did? You know, and I call him Papa, and I'm like, Papa applied at TAFTA, and I don't know what he's up to. But over the weekend, I had the conversation with him, and I said to him, okay, so I hear that you applied to TAFTA. He said, yeah, you know, I just put my name down. I said, okay. But you know, you have a place that you can stay with me. He says, no, but my friends are there. And, you know, I just thought there's lots of things happening. And, you know, when the time is right, then, you know, I'd go there. And I realized why that was so important. You know, there's only so much that I can do to add value to my father's life. He needs that connection with people his own age. He needs to be able to do and be that which he values most. And he gets that from his friendships as well. That kind of companionship is not something I can provide. And this, you know, this is such a big lesson that I learn. Coming from a very traditional Indian community, we are taught to take care of our parents, you know, from a religious perspective. Heaven lies at the feet of your mother. Your father holds the key into heaven, you know, so we must revere our parents. But the biggest lesson I learned was that you have to move beyond that. And what elders need is relevance more than reverence. They need to know that their life is still relevant, and their life being relevant means that they get to do all the things that are important to them, and they need to be able to make a difference in people's lives as well. So that's the lesson I learned from my dad. So it's very humbling, and I have to ask the question about who is this good for, and just let it be, you know. So I said to him, okay, if there's anything you need, if any forms you need me to complete, let me know. And, you know, we're happy to do that. He hasn't yet come into TAFTA. He's got his red bucky that he moves around and does wild and wonderful things with it. But when he's ready to come in, it's something that I have to be okay with as well. But yeah, so I think as children, we have to ask the question around who is it good? We have to ask the question, who is it good for? Is it my perspective or is this my dad's? And then I have to navigate those conversations. Yeah. And I think the other aspect of it, possibly it's a societal pressure, because, you know, it's like, oh, my dad's got 4 kids, and, you know, the kids have put him in a home now. What's wrong with them? And we'll be judged for doing things like that. And then it's about having the conversation. And very often, whenever I'm speaking about TAFTA, I say to people, we must move away from this idea that older people have been dumped at TAFTA. Some of our elders choose to be here. And they choose to be here because it's an expression of who they are and who they want to be. They get to be themselves. They get to be in a safe space. They get to learn new things. There's growth. There's learning opportunities. As Ivan said, there's innovation, and we see people as growing people, not just as people who are waiting in God's waiting room, and the final chapter can be a beautiful chapter. And so that's what we aim to do. At TAFTA, we are driven by our purpose, and this is very meaningful for me. Our purpose is to make dignity, growth, and a meaningful life a realistic prospect for all older people. So those three things are so important to us, and that drives the work that we do.
Well, that's such beautiful. And thank you. Here you are, the CEO of this large NGO, and just sharing so humbly about your very personal experience. To the extent that you've come from, I'm going to ask you to share one more personal story, because we can speak about how this applies in institutions and we can speak about others, but for all of us, we all have elderly people in our lives. And the next story I'm going to ask you to really, it's home. It's like, how am I treating my grandmother, my aunt, my sister, myself? Because you had a very moving story about your aunt.
Yes.
Who started changing. And the family members came to you and said, oh, we're worried about her. And just tell us a little bit about that interaction, because I thought that was also just so instructive.
Yeah, absolutely. So I come from a huge family, extended family. My mom was one of 8 sisters, 2 brothers, 3 half sisters, and 3 half brothers. And that's a whole different story about how our family tree is so complicated. My daughter very nicely puts it. We don't have a family tree. We have a family forest because there's all these branches that just goes all over the place. So my mom has a huge family, and her eldest sister was a very well-dressed, well-spoken person who presented to the world beautifully and loved all things beautiful as well. So she has 6 children, and she always held court. My mom's oldest sister was like the matriarch of the family. And so the one day I get a call from my cousin, my eldest cousin, and she's like, oh, mom's not well. Would you be able to come and visit her? And, when you get the call from the eldest cousin, you just drop whatever you're doing and you go. It's not a request, it's an instruction, that kind of thing. But anyways, I have so much of love for my aunts anyway. So I went through. And I get to the home, beautiful home, and my aunt is very comfortable. She's in her room. She's got a hospital bed, the one that goes up and down with the remotes. She's got this lightweight blanket over her. She's got the aircon. Beautiful, everything, all the comforts that she wants, she has. But the curtains were closed. It looked very dark. And one of the things that worried me was that my cousin was saying to me, my aunt didn't want to bath, which was strange because my aunt was very particular about personal health and the way she presented to the world. So when I got there, I spent like 2 hours with her. And I said to her, what's happening? I said, are you not feeling well? She did have a number of health conditions. She said, no, I think, my time has come. I've done all that I need to, and my kids are okay, so it's time for me to go. Long and short of it, after speaking with my aunt for a long time, what I realized is that her kids loved her so much. They made her so comfortable. They bought her all the things that she needed to be comfortable. Because she had a heart condition, they would not speak to her about things that would trouble her because they didn't want to put pressure on her. Because she had fallen in the garden when she was outside tending to her roses, they no longer supported her to go outside in case she fell again. And, they wouldn't give her any work to do because of, again, her heart, whatever. They've basically, in their actions and in their love for her, they told her that she was useless, because she had no purpose. Nobody would speak to her about real things. Nobody would share with her any of their problems. She was not allowed to engage in the activities. So they basically just made her comfortable waiting to die. So I came out of the room after sitting with my aunt for a while. And I said to my cousin, okay, here's the thing. You need to let your mother help you. Even if you know how to cook, you pretend like you don't know and get your mother to teach you how to cook again. I said, but simple things. Get her to clean the vegetables or whatever. Let her sit in the kitchen. Her kitchen is her comfortable place. Food for us is our love language. This is how we show the world we love you through food. Let her be in the space. And for many, many years afterwards, my cousin thanked me profusely for having that conversation. She literally went out and bought vegetables for my aunt to clean. But she said that one conversation brought home how it's so important, the whole issue around reverence and relevance. You can't just revere your parents. You have to tell them that they are relevant in your life, and you have to allow them the space to be involved in everything that you're doing. So these lessons that we have in our life also brings me to what I need to do within the organization as well. Yeah.
A fabulous story. And I really, we're open for questions now. There's just one theme I want to highlight particularly. I'm going to ask all three of you to speak, but it's our relationship and all of our relationship to risk, I think, because if you want to embrace spontaneity and invite joy and the unexpected and let your mother into the kitchen to cook with you, there's going to be some mess. There's going to be some conflict. It's not always going to be easy. Especially when you're running a large institution and 13 buildings and thousands of people, it's easy to stick to the protocols, right? That keeps everyone safe. That allows things to work efficiently. But if you're now inviting joy and spontaneity and you're courting risk. So maybe, Willem, could you speak to sort of the Eden alternative, your learnings, this just how do we grapple with risk? Because as people get older, we want to sanitize, we want to control, we want to de-risk, and then things become boring, right? So how do you walk that line? Can you share something with us on this topic of risk and joy?
Yes. No, and I think it follows so beautifully from what Ivan and Femada shared. It's life is risk. You can't live without risk. And the only way to do that is to sterilize it. And that's why this institutional model that we've inherited has created so much unhappiness and so much disconnect. Because the only way to keep someone 100% really safe is to put them into a padded room, and never let them leave. And a lot of institutions try to do that. They try to do that with physical restraints. They try to do that with medicational restraints. And you see it when you walk into a place where people almost become zombified, but they're safe. They're parked in a chair, down the corridor in a line, but there's no joy. There's no spontaneity. There's no life. So I think it's very, very, very important that we re-look at our relationship with risk and have honest conversations when someone move into a retirement village, and don't create false expectations, because a lot of the time they move into the retirement home after a fall. So there's this expectation from the family that they're never going to fall again. Everything that went wrong in their own home is now in the past. And the reason why they're in the home is that they're going to be safe and nothing bad is going to happen. Where the conversation should be that they are old and they might be frail, but they are a human being who should be able to do everything that they used to do, but within a conversation and environment where we speak to them respectfully about the risks involved in the choices that they make. And it's a continuing conversation to say, yes, you're 89 years old, you maybe just had a hip replacement. So these are the risks, of that reality. How do we address those within the parameters of your dignity, in the parameters of your joy? So it's really about saying risk is not a bad thing. It's how do we respond to that risk? And I think we've created this system where we are reactive to risk And because we're so terrified of it, that reaction has become this institutional monster, where even the caregivers are terrified of taking risks, because if you are caring for someone and they fall while they're in your care, it reflects that you're a bad carer. So it's this vicious circle of risk becoming this unmanageable thing, that we have to avoid at all costs. So it's really about saying, if you're a human being and you get up from the chair, there is the risk that you might fall, whether you're 4 or whether you're 94. So we're not going to stop you from doing it, but how do we empower you to first acknowledge that risk, take ownership of that risk, and also understand what is normal aging and what's not normal aging. Like Ivan said, active aging. And it's about older people becoming active in their role as an older person, and say, I am old and my relationship to risk has changed. I'm not becoming risk avoidant, but I'm changing my relationship to risk. And the same as a society that we live in.
Thank you, Willem. One of the stories I remember when I first learned about the Eden model that made such an impression on me is, how so many institutions that care for the elderly won't allow animals. Like, why?
Yes.
Animals make so much meaning to people's life, and it could be a bird, like, don't even say it's going to run around and get underfoot. And what a difference it makes if you let people have animals. Like, I was like, gosh, you're right, but no, heaven forbid, we've got to manage the risk. So no animals under any circumstances. I was like, wow, yes. What if animals were around, And we found a way to deal. It blew my mind and it's always stayed with me. But you lose so much when you have to move to these institutions, including beloved animals. You were going to say?
So Rain tells a story of, and it's a home with one of these, kilometer-long corridors where everyone is parked against the wall and sitting in the wheelchairs, and there's no joy, there's no spontaneity. But one of the residents had a budgie, and the budgie escaped, and it went hopping from head to head, and it was utter chaos. But for those few minutes with that little bird jumping from head to head, those people who never responded, who never spoke, who never did anything, became alive because of this little bird that just jumped and connected them and brought life into it. And life is chaotic. It's the chaos of life where we find the beauty, where we find the harm, where we find it. It's the chaos of life. Life is chaos. Without chaos, we won't have life. So we can't sterilize that, because without it, there's no life. It's just existing. And I think that's the sadness of this institutional model, is that we have older persons who are just existing in this perpetual state of being cared for. And it's meaningless. It's meaningless for the person who's being cared for and for the people who are caring for them.
It really makes me think about, like, what is care, right? We think care is like doing everything for your auntie, Femada, or keeping them safe or putting them in a lovely place. But is that what it's like our love language, but it might not be what they want. What is care? We give what we think people need, but are we asking them what quality life means to them? I mean, if I take anything from tonight, it will be a banana, Steri Stumpy, and a budgie for them. The power of these tiny, beautiful things, right? Ivan, what's coming
Absolutely.
up for you? Any anecdotes? Anything you want to add about living in a way that maybe defies convention, that is chaotic, that people don't quite know how to box you or stereotype you? You're on mute, so you'll need to unmute, Ivan. There we are.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So I'm just reminded about, because I'm on the other side, and basically I'm an elder. So I'm speaking from that point of view. And I think of my dad, because my dad was 89 when he passed on, but he was actively, till that very last day, involved in serving and in volunteering. And he had a problem with one of his veins in the neck that had a blood clot. And I used to tell him, Dad, you can't keep on doing what you're doing, because you're going to have a blackout, you're going to fall, this is what's going to happen. I couldn't keep my father down. He says, no, Dad, I got to do this. And when I think about it now and I reflect back on what he used to say to me, in a way, what he was doing was helping him better himself. Because if he stopped doing what he was doing, or if I stopped him from doing what he wouldn't have lived up to 89, and he wouldn't have lived a full life. And also he wouldn't have had the opportunity to engage in what he was actually doing. So I think that's one of the big risks. And I think risk can be, if we don't know how to navigate that and handle it, it could be a limitation and actually stop growth, stop people from being themselves. Because as an elder myself, I want to experience agency. I want to experience the dignity and purpose and connection and growth. I want to have that. I don't want to come here and have all these limitations, But at the same time, obviously, we're weighing different circumstances and different situations. But I think for me, the crux of it is we have to take risks. And that is important. If we want to grow, if we want to expand, if we want to have TAFTA going from 13 institutions to more institutions, becoming one of the best institutions, not only in KZN, but and beyond, I think there's plenty potential for that to happen. We want to become the most friendliest organization in KZN and beyond. I'd love to see that happen. So yeah,
all of us want to go to TAFTA after tonight. You sold us, Ivan, and I'll be sharing the details of how to donate so that indeed TAFTA can spread around the country. We need TAFTA everywhere. That is just gorgeous. There's one last thing. So Femada, you might want to speak to this, but also I think there's something you said also in preparation for tonight that stayed with me about sort of agency, because Ivan, you introduced the term active aging, which had never really landed with me in the way it's landed with me tonight. Active aging, aging is agency. It can be a suitcase word, but active agency, I love. And I don't know if it was a family member of yours, you told me, but like the day that she and her husband retired, she stopped cooking, and it was like, but you always loved cooking. You're just like, I'm done with cooking, And there's something about getting older where you can say, I'm done being nice. I'm done cooking. I'm done looking after kids. I'm done doing all the things you always thought I loved. You can actively determine, like, this is a stage in my life where I can put down things. I can stop working. Yeah. I can stop whatever. And to actively, it's like, Mom, what's wrong? You stopped cooking. But that's the joy. That's the agency of getting older. You can actually truly not be beholden to people anymore. And there's a gorgeous agency in going, this is not the time it's not the time for giving up and limiting. It's consciously choosing what I'm putting down. You might want to speak to that or other things, Femada.
Yeah, sure. Oh, there's so many stories, but let me do this one. So, as I said, Mary was my mentor. She's the person that got me into this field. And Mary was coming towards retirement. And I remember we were going to have a conversation with the Department of Social Development, that kind of conversation, very robust one. And as Mary and I were preparing to go and have this conversation, she said to me, okay, Fem, this is how we're going to deal with this. You're going to, talk about all of these things, but I'm just going to say what I need to say. That's how it's going to be. So she's going to have the tough conversation. And I said to her, okay, but Mary, why? She said, because, I'm over 60 now. I can say whatever I want to say. And that always stuck with me, this idea that she had this absolute freedom and the world expected her to speak her mind because, she's over 60 now. And I thought that always stayed with me, that conversation about how being an elder can also be very liberating. And I had this conversation with someone a while back about how the world is so focused on youth. Everyone talks about when you were young, it was the best time in your life, da, 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 da. What if we flipped the script? And what if we said, when you were young, it was actually the worst time, and the best time of your life is after 60? And why I say that is because if you had to segment your life into three, your first kind of 30 years, you are discovering who you are, you're learning, relationships forming, whatever. So you're doing all of this in your first 30 years of life. The next 30 years of life, I call it the squirreling period. It's the time where we just go and squirrel, and we get a whole lot of stuff. We accumulate things, we accumulate relationships, we accumulate way too much of Tupperware and containers that we need. But we just accumulate a whole lot of things. And we live up to the expectations of others. In our accumulation of these relationships, we try to conform. But what if after 60, after you've done all these things, you've got all this experience, what if after 60, you get to be you? What is important to you? You understand what your purpose is. You understand what gives you joy. What if after 60 is the best time in your life, and it's the time when you get to give back as you see fit? And I've seen that happen in conversations with our elders. There was one lady who was at TAFTA Ridge, one of our buildings. We had an open day, and so she was just giving testimony about what it meant to be at TAFTA. And she said, for the first time in my life, I get to be me, and I get to be about me. So I'm not a grandmother, I'm not a mother, I'm not even a wife because her spouse had passed on. I get to be me. So if I want to lie in, I'm going to lie in. If I want to go outside, I get to do it. Now, there's a certain freedom that being an elder brings as well. So we must lean into that, isn't it? And allow the space for agency like Ivan speaks about. But I think the one thing that I want to talk about as well is this whole idea that everything has to be clean and neat and, ordered. Life is messy, and we have to accept that. That's the first thing. The second thing is we create community, we say, at TAFTA. And we also talk about the TAFTA family. And, Ivan, when we were having a conversation, we spoke about how this is our TAFTA family. In fact, one of the ladies called it her floor family. When she came out of hospital, she didn't want to go and visit or stay with her family. She wanted to be at TAFTA because her floor family were going to take care of her. And if we're going to talk about family, we then have to be very real about this. There is no family on this earth that are deliriously happy all the time. No family at all. So you're going to have to accept that if you have a family, you're going to have the whole myriad of emotions that come with family: happiness, sadness, frustration, all of it. And if we accept that reality, we stop pursuing 100% happiness all the time. That's not going to happen. So I think we must be real about it. There are moments when we are going to be extremely joyful. And in that moment, we must sit with it and enjoy it. The other aspect that and I was speaking to my daughter about this, was this whole idea around impermanence. Nothing lasts forever. This too shall pass. Joy shall pass. Happiness shall pass. Sadness shall pass. Everything. So in that moment, you must enjoy it and just experience it and take from it what you can. And we're blessed at TAFTA because we can experience this whole myriad of things because we embrace the diversity. We accept that we have a diverse range of elders that call TAFTA their home. And in that diversity, they bring a whole different way of thinking. It does stress us out sometimes because when you run an organization, you have to have conformity, but you have to balance conformity with life. Life happens, so we have to deal with it. Yeah.
Beautiful. So Ivan, tell us honestly, what is this third stage like for you, and what is surprising you, and what is inspiring you?
To be honest with you, I am now living my best life. And I think there's two important resources that we need to look at in terms of human resource is our youth and our elders. That's vital. And as research tells us, your most productive years is between the age of 60 and 70, if you didn't know. And thereafter, it's 70 to 80. So we have the opportunity to tap into the wells deep down into our elders' lives and start to draw out what they have within them. And we need to have the skill and the ability to do that. So in saying that, for myself, it's so I'm involved in multiple things. If you see me, you wouldn't even think I am, but I am involved in multiple things. We just launched in January our first EdTech platform that is now being used in high schools across the nation. We have about 300 schools on the platform. We have close to 2,000 learners that are engaging with the platform. We have about 130 educators on the platform. That's just the one aspect. And then when I think of a bottle of coffee, a bottle of coffee, you know what? If you take a bottle of coffee and I give you a bottle of coffee and you think like, okay, what I'm going to do is just take a teaspoon of coffee and put it in a cup and just pour some hot water and then just put a bit of milk, add sugar if I like to. But if you give me a bottle of coffee, I've got many things to do with it. I can create you a latte. I can create you a cappuccino. I can create you a flat white. I can create you iced coffee that is like a Spanish latte. I could do a French toast latte. So I can do many things with that bottle of coffee. So the point is, when I come into TAFTA, I'm thinking, okay, what can I do? I've been handed a bottle of coffee. So what do I do with that? I can take it, or I can do something with it, or I can complain and say, well, that's not the coffee I like. I don't know what to do with it. So the idea is you have to be taking the things. Dreams don't die when you age. It never dies. It's there. And that's where your wealth is. You have to keep dreaming. You got to keep thinking. You have to make sure that you are being educated on a constant basis. And I'm always educating myself on every aspect, whether it's technology, whether it's sciences, whether it's just reading. I'm always educating myself so that I can improve not just my own living, but the living of others. So for me, I think I'm living my best life. I love it. I'm enjoying it. I'm going to be I think somebody asked me, I said, no, I think probably this is my last stop.
In a good way, not like the place
in a good way.
No,
in a good way.
Not
in a
the
good
way,
way.
place
In
you
a
go
very
to
good
die.
way.
Place you go to live your best life. Your best
life. Thank you.
Amazing. Amazing. So there's been so many hearts, there have been so many comments. I think people are really emoting and relating to this. And bless you, all three of you took the assignment and really sort of flipped our minds a bit, gave us different ways, gave us some beautiful images, some catchphrases. So I know many people want to sort of probably dive in and sort of comment, but I'm going to ask people to hold the comments and ask if there are any questions. Does anybody here have any questions for Willem or Ivan or Femada? If you want to share some love and tell them how wonderful they are, please do that in the comments or the reactions. Do you have particular questions for them as our expert panel tonight? Please feel free to unmute and ask away. Or you can just write a comment in the chat and let them know how wonderful they are. Apparently, Ivan, your expertise extends to actually making really good coffee and hot chocolate. It's a metaphor and it's literal. Amazing. And so lovely to have other people from TAFTA here who just nodding. Yep, Mada's really like that. Ivan's really like that. How lovely to see that people love it. Yes, Paula, we do need TAFTA in the Western Cape. So I'm going to share those details of how you can donate because we really need to support this organization and support them.
Is Femada intending to write a book?
Oh, yes, I saw that. Femada.
Well, you never know. Yeah, maybe that will come up as well. Thank you. Thank you. That's so kind. But I think a lot of it is the experiences that we get from our elders. You know, the lessons come from everyday interaction. There's something I started, and Ivan was part of the first one that we did. I realized that sometimes when you sit in a management position, you become a little bit removed from the lived experience of our elders. So I was very intentional, and I said, I want to go out and have conversations with the people who call TAFTA home. So I'm doing something called CEO Conversations. I spend an hour in the building and just, sitting and chatting. And so the question this month was, what's top of mind? When you wake up this morning, what was top of mind? And it's just been so fascinating to hear what people think about as they wake up. And interestingly enough, the thing that comes across most strongly across all the buildings, I've done now 7 buildings, is gratitude. Everyone wakes up, even for those who are in a high care environment, they wake up grateful that they are awake. Secondly, they're grateful for the people around them, for those who care. And the second thing they do is they pray for others. They pray for those who are not well. So this idea around gratitude and community and helping each other comes across so strongly. But it's about connection, and it's about being able to have the conversations with people and just being open to learning. The one thing, though, I want to say while people are still thinking about all of this, is that it's not always easy. So I think that's important as well. In the space, it is messy. Even when you're running an organization, there are down days. There are days when you think, I'm getting it so wrong. And you just think, oh, gosh, how do I get this better? And that's when you meet somebody in the lift and they just tell you, okay, today is a good day. They'll tell you about whatever they're busy with. And you just think, okay, this puts it into perspective. All this, the hard is worthwhile. And I think the other lesson that I leave with is we choose our hard. Everything is hard. You choose to engage, it's hard. You choose not to engage, it's hard. So choose your hard, whichever one you want. And I think we have to have that kind of perspective. So I've learned that working in this environment, you have to be able to pivot and move between different things at different times, at different paces, but you also have to be open to criticism, you have to be open to change, and you have to listen. I think that's the important thing. Not last year, the year before, our campaign that we ran at TAFTA was called Sawubona. So Sawubona is this Zulu greeting. It literally means I see you. And that's what we want to look at. How do we see our people, our elders? How do we see our colleagues, our friends, our partners? And I think once we're able to see them and recognize their worth, we then move on to the next round. This year, our theme is Sisonke, and that is about togetherness. This is how we are together, and this is the partnership. So yeah, a lot of the lessons comes from the conversations that we have with everyone within TAFTA, whether it's our staff, whether it is our elders, our partners. We just need to be open to being on this journey together for a better life for everybody, not just for the elders, but for us as well. I get something out of being here. It fulfills something that is valuable to me. This idea that my work is an extension of my humanity, that's important as well. Yeah.
And taking the time to also stop and reflect. Willem alluded to it right in the beginning, that when someone died, there was a circle, there was a reflection circle.
Yeah.
If things are going to be messy, we need to be able to stop and debrief, but that takes time too, so being so intentional about these things. Linda had 2 questions. I'm going to direct one of them to you, Willem, and ask how do people get trained, especially carers, in the Eden philosophy? How long does it take? Tell us a little bit how the training works for those who want to learn more.
So the Eden Associate training is a 3-day training that is either presented at the GERATEC head office here in Somerset West, or we do it at the organization. So we will be in KwaZulu-Natal in the first week of September in Howick, where we're doing training at 2 different villages there. With TAFTA, because they've done the journey, they now do their training in-house. So their Eden champions do the training in-house. So there's different ways of doing it. And what we've learned is, reach out to me and say, Willem, I want to learn more about Eden, whether it's individually or whether it's for your organization. Nothing is set in stone. So we always start with a conversation and say, where are your village at? What do you need? And how can we bring the Eden philosophy into your home or into your village. And I think TAFTA is the perfect example where they started off with this Eden idea, but it's no longer Eden. It's now TAFTA. Eden is a tool, you know. It's something that they've built into the fibers of that organization, and I think that's the beauty of it. It is not a ideology. It's not a framework. It's a way of being in the world and saying, I choose to be present and I choose to respond differently to the older persons that are in my life, whether it's my family members or whether it's my neighbors or whether it's someone that I see in the shop. It's to see them and acknowledge them as a fellow human being, not as an older person who is at a disadvantage from you.
And also how we see ourselves, Willem, you know, how we see
Absolutely.
ourselves. We're all on this journey. No one's getting younger here.
No,
And it's
no.
inspired me to think, you know, about how I think about what my future looks like. Not just how we think about the people around us, how we think about ourselves too.
Yes.
That's beautiful. So I will provide Willem's contact details so that you can reach out to him. I'm going to ask him to say a little bit more about a conference. Last question, maybe, Femada, is tell us about recruitment. You've created such a particular culture now. What's your secret sauce? Are you super picky? Are you flexible? Like, how do you recruit people into such a particular culture?
Yeah, so I feel like I'm going to be judged by my colleagues at work here. We are super picky. No. When we look at recruiting for a position, we use a competency-based approach to recruitment. So there must be a fit between the person and what their values are and what the organization requires. So we're very intentional around recruitment. For example, when you come in for a residential care supervisor post, there are certain key competencies that are non-negotiables. You know, you must be a people's person. If you don't like people, then you're not in the right place, you know. And we're also very honest. If TAFTA doesn't bring you joy, then life is short. You should go and find your joy wherever it is. TAFTA doesn't have to be all things to all people. That's from an employment perspective as well. So yes, we are intentional in the way we recruit, but we also invest in our people. Training is so important. One of the key outputs last year was that 99% of our staff had been on training. 99%. We've got a staff complement of about, I think, 138 now. And 99% of them had been on training. So we recruit very strictly, but we also then invest in training of our staff. And just to say, and here I'm flexing a little, but I have to, you know, a little bit. But in terms of our turnover, it has been 1% turnover in our staffing, 1%. The national average is 13.5. So people stay at TAFTA. That's the one. The second is that our long service awards are like 25 years, 30 years, you know, it's going on. People stay at TAFTA for a long time. The next thing is our absenteeism rate is 0.38%. So what does that tell me is that our staff are not only staying, but they are present. You know, they come to work, they're inspired about what they need to do. So I think finding the right fit is so important and having the honest conversation. When people want to leave the organization, we support them leaving, because sometimes people will leave because they want to have a career change. Sometimes they want to look at working in industry and they want that kind of life, and that's okay. You know, we must be able to say it's okay for you to pursue that which is important to you. But for the most part, people stay at TAFTA. So, you know, that whole adage, you must train people so well that they can leave the organization, but you treat them even better so that they stay. And our people stay. Yeah.
It's lovely.
Yeah, we got a good team.
Yeah, and you're a good leader, clearly. And we will say that to you, although you won't say that yourself. It's such a joy to be of your caliber. and humility, Femada. Just what a delight all around. So I'm mindful of time. We're coming up to 7:30, and I promised to share a few things. So I'm just going to share my screen quickly and ask Willem to speak about the conference that's coming up. It's got the same title as our webinar tonight, Willem. So tell us a little bit about the conference. Willem?
You need to unmute. No, Willem, you need to unmute.
Classic mistake. So yes, the conference is taking place here in Cape Town, 30 September and 1 October. And the goal of this conference really is to bring all the different stakeholders of the aged care sector together and say, how do we put into practice, everything that we've spoken tonight? How do we walk the talk? How do we make sure that the Department of Social Development, the Department of Health is in line with what's happening in the sector? Is there anything, from an academic point of view that can be wonderful and helpful to someone in the community, and vice versa? So it's really about looking at aging, not only within the residential setting, but in the community setting, and saying, what do we as a society need to do to make sure that we are aging? This is something that we realize, and this is a global thing. By 2030, 1 in every 6 people are going to be over the age of 65. So we need to think about aging, and aging in the context of our communities and our cities differently, because these are the majority of, are they going to be the majority of the people who make use of services, who are going to engage with, shopping malls or online services or anything like that. It's interesting. A friend of mine works for Takealot, and he says they've just started hiring people to make sure that their digital services speaks to the needs of older people. I mean, this is one of the biggest retailers in South Africa, because they realize that, the service is not meeting the needs of this demographic. So it's really about how do we bring people who are maybe isolated because of geographic locations or because of financial situations under one roof, and say, how do we share the resources that we have? How do we make sure that you are aware of what's happening in the sector? Because there's so many amazing things happening. And to say that if you are a small organization, maybe you can tap into a TAFTA, who has resources and who's got all of the things. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. You are not alone. And especially for older people who are in the community, to empower them and say, these are the resources that are available to you as an older person. Empower yourself as an older person. And I think, like Ivan is a beautiful example to say, this is how I choose to age. You now, as an organization or as a company, I think need to respond to that, because my voice matters. So yeah, I'm really excited about it. TAFTA Derek is going to be there. Femada is definitely going to be one of our draw cards and attractions. So I'm really looking forward to it. I will share the link to register now in the chat. Thank you, Lee.
Thank you, Willem. And there's a link, so you can go onto Quicket and just type in, as I did, Aging Well Together Conference, and you'll get the link. And Willem will also pop it in the chat now. If you want to help TAFTA continue living to their vision, which I loved, it was there when I went to research you, Femada. If you want to help them continue inspiring active aging, then consider donating. And there's the link to donate. You can also go to the website. The button is quite there. And if you want to become a member of Dignity SA and support our work to make sure that people at the end of their lives have the full range of choices available to us, it's free to sign up, join, and then you'll get notified of dialogues like this in the future. I am going to move to closing now by asking each of our panelists to popcorn. If you wanted the people who've been listening so beautifully here tonight, thank you everyone who stayed right till the end, to leave with one thing, or maybe two. You can have two. But if you wanted them to leave with 1, 2 things tonight, it could be a feeling. It doesn't have to be a nugget of information. If you could, something that could really make a big difference to their futures and the futures of the people around them. What would you want people to maybe think differently about, or feel differently about, or what's the nugget? What's the new, different way? I'll stop there, and any of you can go first.
Okay, I'll start. So what I want people to leave with is relevance over reverence. That's important. And the second thing is investment in retirement is more than just finances. It's investment in relationships, because to combat all of these hardships of old age, so to speak, you need people around you. So invest in those kinds of connections. Yeah.
We're so obsessed with saving for retirement. We don't think about these other things. I love that distinction. Thank you. Willem, Ivan. Let's give Ivan the last word. Come on, Willem.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. I just wanted to say that. So I want to echo what
Ivan,
Femada says.
You're closing us out. Sorry, to be disrespectful.
It's recognizing that personal development doesn't stop with age. Doesn't stop. So we have the ability to keep growing, keep expanding, keep thinking, keep moving. There's so much more we have to offer to the world. So it doesn't stop with age. Never stops.
I did not know that people between 60 and 70 were at their most productive, and then 70 to 80. That's definitely something I'm taking home with me. And maybe closing, for those who are still here and listening, tell us what your nugget is. Is it a banana, Stumpy? Is it?
I think for me, the key thing is for all of us to build a better awareness around ageism, but also about internalized ageism. I often hear it, how people speak about themselves as an older person. I'm a burden, or I'm this, or I'm that. And I think that in itself will have a tremendous impact on how we view older people. If older people start talking about themselves differently, realizing that they matter, and they matter until their last breath goes. You're still alive until you're not. So whether you're 80 or 95 or 102, show the world that you matter. Be an annoyance, be a burden, challenge, disagree, be unpleasant, because the louder this demographic is, and the more they show society, we are here, we're not going anywhere. You're not going to put us in a home, or you're not going to ignore us. We're here. I think that is the shift that we need, because it's older persons who needs to be the change, not the institutions, organizations who care for them. It's older persons who say that I matter, and I will tell you I matter because I'm 90 years old and I don't care what you think about me anymore.
Brilliant. And Ivan, thank you for giving us such a beautiful, refreshing model in your personal example. Please give Stacey our love.
Thank you so much.
I'd love to meet her too. If she's your other half, must be an amazing woman too. Thank you to everybody who's joined us for this conversation. It's been even more delightful than I hoped. So human, so humbling, and really, really, it's such an overtraded word, but really inspiring. So drop us a note in the comments as you're leaving. I love all the emojis and the love that's coming through. Really, Femada, bless you for the time the care you put into preparing. Ivan, divine to meet you. And Willem, just always a joy to listen to and learn from you. Thank you, everybody. Good night.
Thank you. Thank you so
everyone.
much. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.